Every year, the world produces around 4 billion tonnes of food, and between a third and a half of it goes to waste, according to the report from the British Institution of Mechanical Engineers. Much of this can be traced to how it is harvested, stored and transported, says report co-author Colin Brown.
It's trying to rot all the time, so you've got to keep it dry, you've got to keep it cool, and you've got to transport it and use it as quickly as possible. So I think when you haven't got the infrastructure, you haven't got the railways, you haven't got the shipping, you're doing damage to it every time you move it.
In developed economies, such as in Europe and the United States, the report says more efficient farming practices ensure that more of the food produced reaches consumers. But it claims millions of tonnes of food is thrown away because it's past its sell-by date, or sometimes because it doesn't reach the supermarket shelves at all.
Certainly once you get it to the supermarket, they have very high standards about the way it ought to look. Not about how it ought to taste or whether it's edible or valuable, but exactly how it ought to look. And so we throw a lot away just because it's not cosmetically attractive.
That's not the fault of the stores, says Richard Dodd of the British Retail Consortium, which represents supermarkets.
In fact, these are EU marketing rules, and the retailers have been at the forefront of pushing for a relaxation in them, and that has happened. Back in 2009, 26 different items of produce were taken off those lists.
Many aid agencies and charities welcome the report for highlighting the huge amount of waste at a time when millions of people suffer from malnutrition. The aid agency Save the Children says there is enough food in the world to feed every child, but still 2.3 million children die as a result of hunger every year. Brendan Cox is Director of Policy.
The families are having to choose between feeding themselves and feeding their children, and nobody should have to make that choice.
Large amounts of land, energy, fertilisers and water are also lost in the process, according to the report's authors. But they say there is another message in the figures.
The very positive message here is that while we're losing so much in waste, and the population growth and the demand for food across the world, we can meet it if we just reduce the waste. We don't need to cut down lots more forests and plant a lot more crops.
And with the global population predicted to peak at 9.5 billion people by 2075, the report concludes that reducing wastage must be part of the plan to meet that demand. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.